So a little while back, Curly done an extensive video on the new range of terminal tackle from Cygnet. Today, we're expanding on that and we're honing in onto the Clinga Hooks. Now, this is a very interesting pattern. We'll tell you a little bit more about it a little bit later, but what better way to test them than to actually try and catch some fish? So myself and Ian have come down to Sumner's Pond in Horsham, and hopefully we're going to do just that. Let's jump into it.
Okay, so we're off the mark with this little guy. There's no monsters in here, but when it's 25 degrees out, getting anything, I think, is a bit of an achievement. I'm going to get him straight back because it's absolutely baking and it's definitely not fair to keep him out. It was caught on a really simple KD rig, which I'll show you guys how to tie in a moment. Let's get him straight back. Okay, so as Luke said, we're down at Sumner's Pond today. We've got a couple of hours to try and catch ourselves a few fish and put these hooks to good use. Got size 6s, beak point in a barbless. They're the ones I'm using today because the fish are quite small in this lake, so definitely not going to be chucking any of the size 2s at them. It would be a little bit excessive. I prefer a beak point hook, mainly because if you think of the general sort of animals in nature, any birds or anything like that, all of their claws seem to be, well, curved like a beak point hook. If nature thinks that's the best way for them to grab hold of something, surely if we can incorporate that into a hook, might be a step in the right direction. Who really knows? Let's have a look at a rig that I'm going to use for them. So it's a really simple rig. It's basically a KD rig. I don't really like to complicate things too much within my fishing, so coated braid, doesn't really matter which one you pick. There's loads on the market and they're all just as good as each other. So let's take a section of that off, give that a little snip, and then just need to strip back sort of about 5-6 inches of the coating. There we go. Tie a little overhand knot in the end, and that's just going to give you your little loop for your hair stop. I try to keep the loop small enough to fit inside of the bait that I'm using. Okay, there we go, that's done. And then we'll just trim that tag end off as well. Just like that. Next up, you've got to thread the hook link material through the back of the eye towards the point of the hook, and that way you will make sure that the hair's coming off on the right side and obviously that the hook link's coming out of the right side. I like to keep the hair about 1 inch. I normally use sort of a 16mm boilie on that. So then just basically a knotless knot. I whip down twice, then go around the hair and whip down another sort of 5 times. The amount of times you whip doesn't really matter, just as long as you've still got a nice supple section sort of at the eye end of the hook, if that makes sense. Pass that back through the eye of the hook again towards the point, and that way you'll end up with a little rig just like that. It's really simple, really straightforward. Other than tying a figure of 8 loop in the other end, it's pretty much ready to go. So I'll just quickly do that now. Tie that on there. Like so. Moisten your knots and trim the tag end. There we go, and there we have it. A couple of blobs of putty up and down that, and it will be sitting extremely nicely, ready for a fish to come up and hopefully give you a take. Let's see how we get on.
But it looks like the straight points come into their own as well. And yeah, I was slacking a little bit, but it looks like I'm off the mark eventually. So this was on the Ronnie, which once I've landed this, I'll show you how to tie. I mean, most of you probably know how to tie a Ronnie by now, but it just shows how versatile these Clinga hooks are. So let's get it in. It doesn't feel a monster. Hopefully it's a bit bigger than Ian's, but at the moment it doesn't feel like it. Well, it took a little bit longer for me, but I'm finally off the mark. And as Ian said earlier, it is an absolute scorcher today, so I'm going to get this one back quickly as well. There's been a lot of fish cruising about, but I think half of them are just on the top enjoying the sun. So I'm going to get this back and I'll show you what I was using, because I'm using a slightly different rig to Ian. He definitely wants to go back, so I'm going to talk you through what I'm doing and how I caught this crazy little fish. So the hooks I'm using are the Clinga SP, and I'm using a size 6. It's about the right size, I think, for what I'm doing. So the rig I'm using is the ever faithful Ronnie rig. So I'm going to show you how I'm tying that. Like I said earlier, most of you are probably quite aware how to tie a Ronnie, but in case you're not, then can't get in the packet. So there's one thing with Cygnet, there's always strong packets. So let's get one of these out. I'm using barbless, this is barbless 𝘃𝗵𝗶𝗀, but normally I would opt for a barbed hook. I'm a really lazy angler, so I'm using a ready tied boom, and I've already put a little bit of putty on there. That will obviously counteract the weight of the pop-up. So that is my boom. I also need a little bit of shrink tube. I'm just gonna cut a bit there, about that much should be fine. Oh, Ian's getting a bit of activity. And then it's a case of just threading the shrink tube over the hook, hooking on the swivel on the end of the boom, and then feeding that shrink tube back over the swivel and then shrinking it down. Now I'll shrink it down off camera. I'll just slide this on for now, because you can do it with a lighter, but I do prefer to use steam from a kettle. So that will just shrink down nicely onto that and give a nice curve. Now this shows how versatile these Clinga hooks are, because it's a very unusual pattern in the sense that you can pretty much use it for any rig that you need to make. So there's not many hooks that you can do that, but it's quite a wide gape, and with a nice straight point as well, it lends itself to a multitude of different rigs. Now, obviously I've opted for the straight point. I see Ian's logic completely about everything in nature having claws which are like beaked points, but there's something about a straight point for me. I just feel that there's even less resistance for it to go in, and these are needle sharp as well. So a nice straight point, which is really, really sharp, obviously that should penetrate a fish's mouth pretty easily. So to just finish this off, I need a couple of little extras. So in here, I've got a little swivel. I'm going to slide the big eye of the swivel onto the hook. Oh, God, they are sharp. And then just a little hook bead which will hold that in place. So that will just go onto there and slide around. So slide that around just past the bend of the hook, and then that's pretty much it. It's then just a case of, like I say, shrinking this shrink tube down and then tying on a hook bait. Now, obviously these rigs, they do lend themselves to a pop-up, so all I'm doing to tie it on is getting a little bit of bait floss and good old high-vis white pop-up. So get that on there. You can then just slide the bait floss through that swivel, slide the pop-up onto the floss, and then pull that just into the swivel. Not too far, because you still want to allow movement, just the right amount. Then just a little overhand knot, trim off the excess, and then you can just light it. Quite a long flame. Thanks, Ian. And then you can just blob down the floss. Then that's it. It's good to go. So let's get this out there. Hopefully we can have a few more, because there's one all, isn't it?
So today I've been using the Cygnet Clinga BP hooks. These are in a size 6 and they're barbless. The BP stands for beaked point. I do like a beaked point hook. I am a bit of a fan of those, so that's why I went straight for these ones and tried to beat Luke to the punch. He got the straight point ones. He's going to tell you guys about those in a little bit. When a new hook pattern comes to market, it's always a little bit difficult to get people to try them. They tend to sort of stick with their favourites that they've been using for years and years, but I think when you see these ones up close, you'll want to give them a go. They've got a really nice wide gape and the straight eye, which means they can be used for loads of different rigs, and you haven't got to worry about chopping and changing hook patterns just because you want to tie up a pop-up rig instead of a bottom bait rig. They're chemically sharpened, so they're sharp straight out of the packet. You can tweak them up with a file if you want, however it's really not necessary. And as we've shown you guys today, they're plenty strong enough for your everyday fishing. They've also got that lovely PTFE coating to give that anti-glare feature. Obviously no one wants their rig standing out on the lake bed. They want that hook bait standing out, nothing else. Anyway, I'm going to pass you over to Luke. He's going to go through with you about the other hooks in the range, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Cool, thanks Ian. Yes, I have been using the straight point version of the Clingas, and to be honest, Ian hasn't left me a lot to say. He's basically outlined everything you need to know about these hooks. But one thing he didn't say is that these are actually from a Czechoslovakian nymph pattern. So this pattern has been around for quite a while, but not within carp fishing. So that's where Cygnet have kind of seen this pattern, seen a bit of a market for it, and basically ran with it. And I'm pretty pleased that they have, because it is a really nice pattern. So it's kind of hard to explain, but it's almost like a very progressive curve, and then obviously I've got the straight point and Ian had the beak point. So yeah, they're really good, exactly the same as a beak point. They are very, very sharp straight out the packet. They're strong hooks as well, so for the majority of fishing, they're going to be ideal. Now, if you need something a little bit more specialist, they do an XS version. Now you can probably guess what that means. That is extra strong. So it's a slightly thicker gauge on the actual wire, which if you're doing a lot of fishing in weed, fishing tight against snags, fishing locked up, fishing for big fish, that sort of thing, then it'd be well worth checking out the XS version. So yeah, even though it's one pattern, there's a few different options to go for. Now, if you like what you see, then it's well worth checking out the rest of the terminal tackle from Cygnet. And any tackle shop stocking these will be offering a 5 for 4 deal. So you basically pay for the 4 most expensive items, and then you get the 5th one free. So if you are looking to stock up a little bit, it's well worth checking out the other bits in the range. And also, like I say, Curly recently done a video on the rest of the range. So if you are interested in the Cygnet range, definitely check out that video. I'm sure towards the end of this video, it's going to be coming up this side or up here or somewhere. But anyway, if you want to find out more information, head over to the Cygnet Tackle website. But for now, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Just quickly, XS, extra starts with an E.
Yeah, but it's like XXL and...
What are you trying to say? My t-shirt size?